Dun, dun, dun. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello.
Hello.
How is
Let me
everyone?
know if my mic gets too loud or something. I don't know. New microphone.
Is that? Wait, this is a new microphone. I was about to say, I
New
don't remember seeing that
microphone. The
before.
old one died yesterday,
Ah,
which meant I had to go run out and get another one. So the
Did you-
Death
did you-
Star
did
is
you-
now dead.
did you
We
make a
now
little Blue
have
Yeti
the
tombstone?
yep. The blue ice is no more. The black blue ice, and this is now the replacement. This basically looks like a red lightsaber from my end.
Right, let's. I guess let's get on with the,
Yeah,
the
we got
quick do's and don'ts, and then we get our guests on. We can start the stream.
Yep. We got a full house today.
Right, let's see.
That's not slides.
It
There
is.
you go. Be nice, be respectful, use common sense, be a decent human being. Don't post anything that's rude, adult, otherwise against common sense. Don't advertise or promote anything. We all know you need a job. Don't spam the same question repeatedly. That is the big one. What ends up happening is you ask a question a second time, you lose your place in line and you go to last. Not kidding. We really do it. So be careful before you ask a question a second, third, fourth time, or you're not going to get your question answered until, I don't know, 2.5 hours from now. Harassment of any kind is not tolerated. Bigotry, incels, all that nonsense, misogyny. You'll not only be blocked here, we'll share your name around and you'll end up blocked everywhere else too, because all the people who run these different things like Discord and Slack, we're all friends. And lastly, speaking of friends, have a good time.
Indeed, have a good time. Talking about friends, here we are. My name's Simon Lightfoot, Flutter Community Leader, CTO at Dev Angels London. You can follow me on Twitter at Dev Angels London, and we have to do a bunch of community stuff. And I'm also co-runner of Flutter London. There you go. Keep forgetting to mention that. Anyway, Scott, go for it. Your turn.
My name is Scott Stahl. I do a whole pile of junk you don't care about. Organizer GDG Cleveland, also one of the Flutter community leads. I write code under Good Dog Apps, and we do pit bull rescues of older dogs. I guess that brings up
Randall. Randall, welcome to the stage, Randall.
Hey, hi, it's Randall. It's back. I'm back after having I think it was 6 weeks I've been gone. It's been a while, definitely.
Yeah.
Between sicknesses and Google I/O and all that stuff. So it's been really crazy. But I am a Dart and Flutter Google developer expert. I've been that since the beginning of the program, which is 5.5 years ago. And I'm also a full-time Flutter developer for a very large pinball manufacturing company, which I can't name. Well, I probably could name them, but I don't care. And been having fun with that project recently. And I'm also, for this show, the question magician, which means that I am watching the live chat we have on multiple channels. And I'm watching for questions. Put a Q colon in front of your question. That will flag it so that I flag it for us to answer as a panel. If you don't flag it with Q colon, we think it's just a chat amongst yourselves. So, and that happens a lot too. So make sure you flag it. Otherwise, we're not going to take a look at it. And so I'll be here throughout the show, trying to manage all that.
And thank you for, as it Callan mentioned that, if you put URLs in your messages, we will not see them. They get filtered out completely. Instead, if you want us to share some code.
It's not that the URL doesn't show, it's that your message never appears on our screen.
Message.
You'll see it. We won't.
I will mention that if you do want to post some code and have us look at some code, please do. You pop it up on a GitHub gist and put the hash of the gist from the URL in the chat, and we can go look that one up. And we also have a Danielle. Danielle, welcome to the stage.
Yeah, you have a Danielle. It's been a few weeks for me too.
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Danielle Cox. I am one of the organizers for the Flutteristas, which is a group for Flutter enthusiasts that happen to be female or non-binary. And I'm the Flutter tech lead for a company called Ardley. And I think I just figured out what I want my next gig to be, which is going to be a beta tester for Randall.
Happy to have you there.
Oh, come on. You don't have any old games laying around?
I used to have it until I moved. I had an F14 Tomcat pinball machine.
Right.
Which
Wow.
might be that by that company. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, Roman.
Yes. How long have I been bugging you to get on the show, Roman?
I know. Hello, everybody. Again, welcome to Humpday Q&A. My name is Roman. I am a Flutter GDE. I am also a lead Flutter developer at Philips North America. I'm so happy to be here. Always welcome. I feel like this is my second home, surrounded by my favorite Flutter people in the world. So thank you so much, guys, for having me.
You're welcome. Anytime.
It's about time. I would say anytime, but it's about time.
Yeah.
So for
definitely.
those that are new to the show or haven't seen us before, we'll sort of chat for a little bit so you get your questions in. So as we said before, get your questions in with the queue in front, and then we'll start answering your questions after this, and then perhaps we'll also do some live coding. I have a hard stop at 7 tonight, so that's in an hour and 45.
How many hours from now, Simon?
1 hour 45 minutes.
Do the math for us.
1
please.
hour from now. Okay, so we've got basically 45 minutes of show.
No, 1 hour and 45 minutes from now.
Okay, 1 hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, we're all in different
so-
time zones. So, well, except Roman and I are in the same time zone.
I was going to I wanted to make one kind of minor correction to when Scott did the do's and don'ts. The spamming is probably the least important of the do's and don'ts, but it's the one you're going to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other one because we had a great community.
Important.
It
But
happens.
it's the one everybody does. John,
Exactly.
get in
Right.
here.
So guys and gals. Yeah, John, where
Yeah,
are you?
really. John,
He's in a meeting and he's sneaking us in like an earbud on one
Oh,
side.
Awesome.
okay.
We won't tell
That'll-
John. We promise.
We won't tell John. No, it's not recorded
Right.
for prosperity at all. No one know. No one
We
will
were
know.
chatting
They won't know.
before we started. We were chatting about something, and it came up in the Full Stack conference yesterday that we can't do directly in Dart cloud functions.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we can't do cloud functions.
So there is your next best thing, right? So Cloud Run allows for triggers, which is basically what a cloud function is. It's a Cloud Run instance essentially with a trigger attached to it for like I don't know if anyone knows this, but the reason we use the function use the Firebase tool to do your deploys is because it reads the code, works out what entry points there are, and then configures those entry points for the deployment, and actually configures the triggers and does that for you. So it's the same thing, but basically a manual step is you use you can actually use the Flutter Dart create -t server, I think it is the server template. There's a shelf server template that comes with a Docker file pre-made, ready to go from scratch. So you can just build your cloud function and handle a trigger. And there's actually a cloud, I think it's called Functions Framework pub package. Let me grab that for people that don't know. Functions Framework pub package, which provides that. Let me bring up on stream. In fact, why not? Let's see if I can do this.
And just for those of you, exactly, like remember that a cloud function is using Knative behind the scenes, like it's kind of like a serverless container, pretty much.
It was a Kubernetes pod, isn't it? End of the day, I think. But yes, so this functions framework will actually give you the sort of the entry point, just like you would do for a what do we call it? Brain. Well, yeah, just like a triggered cloud function in TypeScript, right? Like you get this entry point, and then it's not just HTTP. You get cloud events, and you get the cloud event spec, and there's a couple of quick starts and examples. Where were they? I think they're in here. See if I can find them. Raw cloud event, JSON, protobuffer Firestore. So you can actually receive Firestore events and handle them. So yeah, get your cloud event, and then you can see what the subject is. And in this case, get the document data, and then this actually outputs the document event data. Sorry, it's a bit small. Oops. Yeah, so this is like a cloud function, right? So we just this is a lot of logging in here, just so you've got it right. But at the end of the day, it's this document event data. So this retrieves the incoming event that comes in, the cloud event, converts it to a document event data. And if we define document event data, it says this has all the see here the document and the update mask and the various things that you would normally get as parameters to your cloud function in TypeScript. So this is basically doing the same thing, but in Dart. And then you can then just deploy this like you would do. I think there's actually some examples, right? But you have to go through the documentation. I forget in the help files. But in the end of the day, you just deploy as a Cloud Run instance and set up a trigger on your Cloud Run instance. There you go, single type Cloud event.
Again, that is the Simon way of doing it. Always, super sophisticated. But I think what she was referring to was we want to see the name Dart when you create a cloud function, all right? Like straight up.
There's a different true.
There's even like to edit it like right on the cloud.
Yeah.
So
there's a difference between saying it's possible and you can do it versus it's easy to do, like direct using the same tooling. And I think that's what we're seeing, right? So the reason why this was made and some of the other stuff is that there's no official feedback on this because they're not putting a timer on it because of priorities, right? But I suspect that like adding other language, like we've seen them add other languages to Firebase, right? It just takes time, right? So they've got to do a bunch of checks, got to make sure it's what they're going to support. It's like us saying, oh, we just want it for these cloud functions, but actually when they support language, they have to support it on like the whole wide range. And it's not that simple. So for the minute, we've got these, still got the support to do it in Dart. So I think the main thing here is a lot of Flutter and Dart developers want to use Dart on Firebase, right? With Firebase on GCP, and this is your middle ground, I think.
Gotcha.
Right. Okay. So I haven't seen any of the full stack. I started watching it and then I got busy. So I in the end I haven't watched it all. Is there some more today? Was there more this morning? Wasn't there?
There was.
Is there more going on now?
There was,
it was 2.5 days, wasn't it?
It was 2 days, and yesterday was US friendly,
Right.
and last night was the Dark 30 butt crack of dawn for us. So we were not able to see most of the talks or any of the 3 tracks, but that's all right.
What
I did see was really good. The recordings are up. If you've registered, you can go look at them right now. In fact, Daria did a really interesting talk on using Gemini in order to do some language translations for a language learning app. And one of the really interesting things was she actually showed how to use it with Firebase, move a lot of things off the client side app, including your keys, so that everything is done server side, which makes it so much harder for an Android or anybody else dev to reverse engineer your app and set it up so that your subscriptions are hacked into saying they're active. And this is a revenue cat thing. So she not only showed about moving your keys and secrets off, she also showed how to push revenue cat off onto the server so that people can't hack it and recompile the app in a way that says you've paid when you actually haven't.
I mean, at some point, it's kind of interesting, the whole security piece. At the end of the day, if you're shipping function, unless you ship 2 versions of your product, right? Your free and paid version, and you only get your paid version once you pay. Well, at the end of the day, someone can then always be able to run some code, which is your paid version, right? So if you're shipping essentially one product with both versions, and it's something you turn on and off to turn on the premium features, or alternatively, if your premium features require a server to run, then you can obviously restrict their access so that it's not until they've got a paid account that they can use it, and that's what the server comes in about, right? But it's interesting to say that anything that the user ends up running on their device, that's it, they're running it, right? So if you're going to give them the premium features or the premium stuff, you've given it to them, right? So it doesn't matter, it might be turned off, right? So it's something to think about, right? Just want to point that out. Right.
So we have got a ton of IO to talk about.
IO.
Indeed.
For those that don't know, it's fullstackflutter.dart. And there's a schedule.
Yes.
And I think you can subscribe and get a link to the videos, but no, they're all going to be up eventually.
Well,
Yeah, so go check it out in your time.
Yeah. Dog is going out over here.
I couldn't make it in the end to Google I/O. I had to cancel. Oh, boohoo me. And
We had
most
an
of us
empty
got to
spot
go.
in the house.
I
Most
was
of us
sad not to
got
see
to
it, Simon.
We
Sorry?
had an Airbnb, and at the last second, we ended up with an empty spot in the house because Simon abandoned us.
Oh,
So guys, how was it? What
I want
happened?
to talk about. I want my story first.
All right, we're
Because of the
okay.
importance in this.
The next hour of the stream is going to be taken up with IO. It's off to work. I go.
Right. So
I-
here's. Sorry, Danielle.
No, you go ahead, Randall. I'll make my joke later.
So here's the thing. So the Tuesday developer keynote spent a lot of time talking about Kotlin multi-platform, and spent a really, really tiny amount of time talking about Flutter. And this was noticed by many of y'all out there, many of y'all out there. And I got tons of notices about it. The next day, there was a series of community meetings, and one of them was the GDE only community meeting. And Roman and I both attended, although Roman cut out just before the thing that I am about to describe. But it had 5 VPs. So it had who was that? Kotlin, just overall dev experience. That was one.
Janine.
Janine.
What about
There was
Michael?
3 others. Yeah. Anyway, so a lot of VPs. And asking again, from us as our perspective as CDEs of being the liaisons with the community, what are we seeing? And so I bravely stood up. I tell you, I was shaking by the time I got to the microphone. I have to tell you this, because I said, here's a problem. I'm out here in the trenches with all your Flutter peeps, and they see Google as having strongly misstepped twice recently. One is with whatever that announcement was that talked about the Flutter team and the Dart team being laid off, which is not what it said in the press releases, but that's how everybody interpreted
from either team got laid off.
Right. Okay.
And
so that was the first misstep. I said, your messaging on that is messed up. You've got to fix this. The second was, in yesterday's keynote, why were you talking KMM all the way through and such a tiny reference to Flutter? That gives the signal to a lot of people to say Google is no longer really supporting Flutter. They're saying it's going to be KMM.
But the moment that they mentioned Flutter, we showed we're still supporting it.
Yep. So I said, you guys tell me that I'm not crazy if I'm trying to say Google is not abandoning Flutter. And what's great is that the head of the Kotlin VP said, absolutely no, we're friends down the hallway with the Flutter people. We're not like trying to replace them. We're just trying to give people alternate choices to get to your solution. And I said, this is great. As a 45-year veteran of the industry, I understand this. I understand how messaging has to be carefully controlled because of, especially with Google being publicly traded. So it's a forward-looking statement issue. There's a lot of stuff to take here, but you guys got to be saying this publicly. What's wonderful about that is that the next morning for the keynote for IO Connect, which is where the more broad people are brought together, I got called out specifically by the DevX VP, and she said, Mr. Schwartzer is asking the right questions, telling us to keep us on the right messaging. So I'm very happy that I got to participate at a very, very high level at this year's Google I/O, my first and only so far Google I/O. But I have this feeling that when it comes up for GDE renewal at the end of the year, I think the VP is going to remember who I am.
That's cool.
Nah.
Speaking truth to power. So I also, Randall and I were during NA Connect, which actually was amazing. We were in some sort of like focus group specifically for Flutter GDEs, and we were speaking with Ander Dobo, I think is his last
Dobo.
name. Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that. Oh, yeah. That
and we
knows
were
that.
actually calling them out directly, holding them, their feet to the fire, and actually asking them the tough questions. They assured us that, hey, there's Flutter, for a long time coming. There's a lot of great support. It's just, and then Randall again, he doubled down on the question, and then he says, you gotta fix the messaging. We also gave him another round of applause and a standing ovation again. But I think it was great because we were, that's why I always say we need to debunk all of these misconceptions in the community that Flutter is going to be killed, that is dead, and none of that. We were speaking with them. Some other folks in the Twitter sphere and X sphere, out there online, were saying like, yeah, people were saying that. No, none of that was true. So I think we actually set the record straight once.
I'm gonna mention. So I was okay. So this whole thing around layoffs and Flutter came around from a friend of ours that tweeted. I guess Kevin Moore tweeted about this and said like it affects the Flutter team no more, no less than any other team. We miss our friends. And that got construed into, oh my God,
exactly,
everyone's leaving.
Yeah, that's
true.
And
let me go over what actually happened here, because I bothered. Okay, I ended up hanging around like a little kid around Philip and Kevin Moore, the other Kevin Moore, Hixie, Craig LeBenz. There were just a whole bunch of people from the team and a number of people from the community. Jimmy, shout out in the Netherlands.
Oh, Jimmy, yeah.
And this came up and we got the real skinny on it. What actually happened is nobody got laid off from the Dart team, but they are moving locations for things that are happening, and people were offered to relocate. So if they wanted to keep their jobs, they had to relocate to the new location, and a number of people chose not to. So they are now looking for other jobs, hopefully within Google. I know someone with developer ecosystems who did get laid off, and what they did instead of laying her off was they furloughed her for 2 months. So what is happening is they're keeping her on payroll for 2 months and letting her have a chance to try to find another team to land on. So she's got 2 months for that. She's getting paid, and this I understand is a number of the layoffs, and part of it is because they're downsizing certain teams, but they're not necessarily getting rid of the people. I have not heard of anyone who was told they're laid off with no chance of getting another job. Every single person I've heard of was offered to keep your job if you want to move, or you have time to try to find a new one inside of Google. And they do get preference on hiring because they are employees.
Anyway,
that's what really happened.
Yeah, definitely. And anyway, the bottom line experience for me was that I'm happy. I feel like Tron. I fight for the user. This was my mission apparently that week, was to keep holding people's feet to the fire, and just and I had a great time doing it, and I could speak with directly to the points, and it was important for that. So that's my first Google I/O. I don't know what I'm doing with the second one. How do I top that? Keynotes, I guess.
You'll find a way, believe me. We always do.
but the kind of summarize.
Also, there were great breakout sessions around Flutter, and those
Yeah.
actually were pretty exciting as well. So it's not like maybe it was completely they dropped the ball by taking it out of like only a brief mention during the keynote, but the breakout sessions were amazing. I loved all of them. So I hope you guys saw a little.
I have to say, from the
really cool.
live stream. From the live stream approach, as soon as Flutter was mentioned, there's a really good reaction from the entire audience.
Oh my God.
I
was going to say that we were the most unruly group in the entire IO.
And it is funny. And during the part where they were mentioning Kotlin, we were saying, "Hey, we've been doing that for 8 years, or 5 years, or whatever." Right? It's like, "Oh, you're friendly cross-platform. How nice of you."
But if you look, was it the developer keynote or the regular keynote where
The developer keynote?
It was a developer keynote. We ended up screaming like a Taylor Swift concert.
Yeah, near the end of the developer keynote, when Flutter was finally mentioned, we were all like, "Yay!" We were kind of like a group.
We called it the party chat. We had a Telegram thread for like all the Flutter goofballs, and it was like, "Hey, Kevin Moore and oh my God, I'm so sorry. Was it Greg? Ended up doing a talk." And so it's going through the Telegram saying, "Everybody go here." So all the Flutter people went over to this talk, and we took over a third of the seats.
Wow.
Something like that. So when they came on, the screaming was so out of control that if you watch that talk on YouTube, you'll notice it begins at the very moment Kevin opens his mouth, because no one can hear anything before that except for screaming. And a number of different times during the talks, there was a lot of yelling and screaming. And there were 2 different Flutter talks that we did that. So that was kind of fun. Everybody was looking at us strange, like we really did come from a Taylor Swift concert.
Do you remember, Scott, when we were at the was it 2018 or was it 2019? I can't remember which one it was.
2018 was DroidCon.
It was 2019. Then we're at Google I/O, wasn't it?
Yes.
When we all did the whole F thing at the front.
I'm
just imagining what the rest of the audience
did it again.
I did it again.
We did
pictures.
Sorry, that's the dog. We did it again in one of the group pictures. I'm not sure where a copy of it is, but yeah, and oh my God, the group picture this year was massive. It was like 4 times the size of 2018's.
Well, the party was really nice too.
Yeah.
The party was remarkable. I really enjoyed
for those
that.
who don't know, we're talking about a Flutter party.
Yeah.
All the Flutter people got together on Wednesday night.
Right. Now, I guess for me to summarize I/O, of the actual content, not just the best part of it, which is the connections and all that kind of stuff, but we were, I don't know, halfway through the developer keynote, and Pooja leaned over to me and said, "We're not at Google I/O, we're at Gemini.io."
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
And remember how many times the word AI got mentioned during the keynote? 121 words.
121. Yeah, I think somebody counted them.
And then Sundar mentioned it like 3 more times, and he bumped it up to like 124.
Even if you only took a drink every 10 times, you were still dying of alcohol poisoning. It was ridiculous.
It would have been a challenge even for me. Yes. Okay. So what else do we know about I/O? What else?
Oh God, here we go with another. You know what?
Should we get started some questions?
We can
you're going to have to define that app, because I don't know a single app that Google is moving from Flutter to Kotlin multi-platform.
Exactly.
Name which app first, because I've never heard of one.
There was so much talk about AI, and I'm just fed up with talking about AI. So we're not going to mention AI here on the show today anymore. That's it. AI.
All right, I'm not going to mention AI, but I'm going to say check out Han's talk. It was really good. So check their talk out. Extra special. It was a great kind of thing to do, and it was very good.
All right.
I do agree with this though. That's going to be crazy too. Yes, right.
I'm wondering how much they'll reference their the Vision headset anymore. We'll
Oh
see.
wow.
The diving goggles of Apple.
Yep.
Right. Let's see. Should we jump on the questions then? Let's see.
We got a few, so might as well get started.
Frey
Where'd Scott
says.
go?
Scott's had to take it to 5. Do you want to
Okay.
lead this out, Frendel?
Heard there's quite a difference between the number of Flutter job postings in the States versus Europe. Any speculation of what the cause of this? Probably the relative sizes of the two places.
I'm gonna mention something from my experience, and that is Europe has always had a larger Flutter following than America over the beginning.
Yeah,
it's America has grown. So New York, well, and VG was the outlier, but the rest of America, zippity doodle.
There are a number of them, but they're not public about it. Huntington Bank has been that way for ages. There are a couple of places here in Cleveland. None of them talk about it. But even then, it's just Americans get entrenched and don't want to change. And it's ridiculous. You can dangle a better thing in front of them and they won't get off their asses for 5-6 years at least.
It's also an interesting thing. Hang on, sorry. It's also an interesting thing here to say that is a lot of startups are using Flutter. They're picking it up, right? We know this, right? It's always been that way, right? But it's interesting is that the company doesn't say we use Flutter. It's not powered by Flutter. It's just built with. It's just the technology you build stuff with, right? So it's never actually something that you promote in that way. That your product doesn't have a Flutter badge on it, right? Like you make this is the thing with cross-platform, right? You make an Android app. Okay, it's made for Android, right? So people just assume it's written in Kotlin or Java or whatever, right? Same thing for like iOS. Okay, it's going to be written in Swift. When you get a React app or a web-based product, web-based cross-platform app, you're going to be looking at it going, I can tell, right? You can read, you can just highlight something and go, oh, I'm selecting a web page, right? Or you can tell the way it loads that you're loading some sort of web app, right? With Flutter, it feels so native that
that's something I've been saying for 4 or 5 years now, that if you do your job right, people can't tell it's Flutter. That's the point.
And my understanding is that what's happened a lot, probably more in the US, because we had a lot of already entrenched mobile application teams that were cross-platform in the sense that they had both iOS and Android team members, is that they've chosen Flutter internally, but that means they get rid of half of their employees. And so we've had a glut of mobile developers in the US, and that's probably why hiring doesn't seem to be as prevalent in the US. Fewer startups are happening here. Mostly everybody who wants to be in mobile already was in mobile, and therefore quite a bit of difference.
Also, I can mention that, for example, I can mention about 10 or 20 companies that are using Flutter, but they're not advertising it. And I like the fact that at least the Flutter website has the showcase of the companies and the apps that are, big companies using it. But, and I totally agree with what you mentioned. Something that Randall and some of us mentioned to the Flutter team is that they need to improve on their messaging. We keep emphasizing that. Like we were saying, why don't you maybe give maybe incentives for companies to promote and to advertise that they're using Flutter and that they can share their journey towards building their applications in Flutter. That way, it also kind of shifts the perception a little bit. It actually shows that a lot of companies are betting on Flutter, and that completely debunks the issue of not a lot of companies are using it, not a lot of jobs or anything.
I mean, just look at the comparison you see on screen.
Yeah.
To answer the actual original question, right? Like, there's America, there's Europe, right?
Yeah.
There's a reason why, like these meetups are really key. The community is really key for pickup in these things. Like, how do you think people hear about Flutter? Like the technologists or entrepreneurs or developers and so on and so forth. They're going to go to these meetups. They're going to go to groups. They go, what is this Flutter thing about, right? And boom, So it's up to us. I think this is actually quite more prevalent right now. This is like an open door policy, right? Anyone go speak at these things, right? Like Go ask. I'd like to give a talk about Flutter to your local GDG meetup, right? And they're gonna be like, yeah, sure, give it. You know,
and as a
and I think-
GDG organizer, I can tell you, it depends on where you are. But where I am, everybody wants blockchain, web, and AI. And trying to get people to come out for Flutter it's impossible.
do
It
blockchain
really
with
is.
Flutter, do AI with Flutter.
As
There
soon
you
as
go.
we pivoted to AI, we went from 4 people showing up to 65. Okay. It was that dramatic a difference.
You're
And so it
muted, by the way,
depends on
Roman.
what town you're in and what people are focused on.
I was gonna say I do what Simon says. Like if anybody says like, oh yeah, we want to do web, I slip in Flutter web, and then there's another thing that you could do with Flutter, so like that.
There's also like there's also the side of this, right? That unless we as a community promote Flutter's not going to be known about, right? Like you have to make opportunity, right? And at the end of the day is, you know, there's all these other conferences and stuff around technology and programming and development and software where people are not interested. They're not first looking at mobile. They've not heard of Flutter before. We talk about Flutter, like we know Flutter because we're always using Flutter, but tons of people have never once heard about Flutter that still need to hear about Flutter, right? At the end of the day, and that's
That,
what
I
it's
had not
about.
thought about that because there are a lot of general purpose tech conferences that are open to having people like us come in and speak.
When we did, when I worked with the Flutter team on doing the We Are Developers conference, when was that? 2019? I think it was 20. I don't know. No, 2019, 2018. We did it was 2019. We did that conference. It was amazing the number of people that had never heard about Flutter, and it opened my eyes up. It was that same thing about these people just don't know about this, right? They've not heard about this. Whereas all the Android developers probably have, right? All the iOS developers probably have because they're in the mobile sphere, right? And it's about getting that reach out there, right?
And just jumping in on a couple of the points that have been made. Yeah, nobody would know. My startup is using Flutter, except I'm out here telling people that's I had up a Flutter team there. Otherwise, people wouldn't know. And it's from the startup's point of view, it's not even really that relevant, but except for the fact that it's an effective way to develop. So so there definitely is that. And I think Scott's probably right that there's a little bit of a cultural side. I'm sure Randall has also heard, back in our college days, that nobody ever got fired for buying IBM. That's
I
kind of
do recall that. Right.
Yeah.
I didn't have college days, but yeah, I remember
fine, yeah.
on that period, right?
But I mean, the point is that is kind of the cultural standpoint also, though, is that, especially in days when people might be a little bit afraid of job security and stuff, a lot of times you'll pick the safer choices and maybe based on messaging that's not always seen to be Flutter over here.
Well, that's actually why I raised in the meeting, Roman might remember this, that I said, it's about reducing business risk. You need to identify how Flutter reduces business risk for managers to select it.
And a few people were mentioning how it brings like the productivity, not only from the development side, but also as far as like the usability, how fast they could put things to market. And there was one person who was like being kind of like a testimonial saying like, we adopted Flutter and in a couple of weeks we had something in front of our customers, as opposed to like, so I think it was a really good way to frame it.
Yeah. I mean, there is nothing better out there right now for prototyping.
Nothing.
And if you've got to build your prototype with it, might as well build the app with it.
What people may not know is that one of the things that was announced is Flutter is currently the most popular cross-platform framework in the world. It has passed everything else.
I'm gonna say what's really interesting in the release of Flutter I saw was that a very popular financial institution here in the UK, Virgin Money, they're using Flutter for their application and have been for some time, and they're using it for all like their materials and
I can't
everything else.
remember which bank. There's a bank in the Pacific Rim that's absolutely massive, and they switched to Flutter. I can't remember the name of it. I think they're out of Singapore. Yeah, but they're absolutely huge.
Anyway, should we go on with some more questions? Should we jump on to the next question?
Fly forward.
Go for it. Recommended way to deal with try-catch. Should it be dealt with locally inside each function or globally by throwing the exception Any tutorials that we can recommend? I do it in the methods. How about anybody else?
At this point, I think it really depends. You know,
Right.
it depends a lot on if this is a kind of a call that you might expect to fail. Throwing an exception is a very useful thing to do out of there. Just also make sure you doc in and document it all very well. But there, you have to look at it. So if it's a call that you're testing for failing, but the call itself shouldn't fail, you need to handle it in the method. But if it's something you might expect to fail, like and so something like maybe an API call, you can see kind of either way. An API call, you could say, I want to return it back this way, or if you want to let the outside know that something went wrong, you would throw an exception. So it really is.
I was going to say there's a really good example there of API exceptions, right? So you have, let's say you get you request some data from the server, and the server returns back 404 missing, right? That's a non-200, non-successful response. Right. However, it's not an exceptional response, right? It may not be like your network succeeded, the entire transaction with the server succeeded. In fact, the API call was a success in that sense, right? Like it was successful. However, the result was the data's not found. So you normally
that's an on right there.
Yeah. So then you've got a choice inside of your API handler is if you want to continue to use that as an exceptional situation, right, in your central application, you might throw your own exception like user not found, right? And then you can then handle that in your UI and say, oh, pop up a message users not found, or however you want to handle it, right? So it's really about error handling. I'm going to make this point, Gerbs, is exceptions and errors are two separate things in Flutter and Dart. And we use the word error in our try-catch statements, but actually it means exception or error, right? Just be clear about this. It's really confusing, the wording around this, so I'm trying to be clear as possible. Exception is something that you can handle and recover from. And error, specifically, is something that cannot be recovered from. For example, is indexing into an array outside of the indexable field, so negative numbers or outside of the length of the array. That is an error. That is a programming error. The program has caused a fault. It cannot be recovered from. It's out of range. It should not have done that, right? Same things as reaching a point where maybe you handle a certain number of enums, and then the other enums should never be handled in this situation. So you can put an else condition in there that throws a state error. This is the application should never enter this state ever, right? And that is an error situation. You're not meant to be able to recover from that, right? The app should crash. It gets reported to your unhandled exception, and again, naming, but unhandled exception handler gets called, and that gets reported Crashlytics or Sentry or your.
But one thing I know that everybody. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
No, it's I got 2 quick points. One is a smartass point. That is, you can't put a try-catch anywhere outside of a method, because something has to be being executed in order to run the try-catch. So you've got a method, you put the try-catch in it, then you run another method to see if that method works. Which is okay. But the other point being something that I had a lot of trouble with. So beginners might have a hard time with this. You hear the phrase error handling. Okay. Really what it is exception handling. And the thing that's tough to get through your head is you don't want to handle errors. At least you don't want to handle them to the point where the app doesn't crash. You want the app to crash if it gets in these states. And Danielle, you can argue this one with Simon.
No. What I mean is, so let me be clear. This is always something I recommend, and it's too often people program safely. They try and program safely, catch everything. If something goes wrong, catch it. That is the wrong thing to do. Right? The wrong thing to do is say catch everything and return like a default value, because then you don't know when an exceptional situation occurred. Catching everything is like the worst thing you can do, right? There's very few situations
you can
where
report it through analytics or crash alert.
Right. But you can catch everything and then do some logging and then rethrow, right? Like the situations where you do want to do that. But for most parts, you want to do a try catch on and then like a specific type. Try and catching everything and then just treating it as like a default, saying, okay, no problem, everything's fine, is liable to make you have hidden bugs that you cannot find in production. I'm telling you right now, this I have experienced for many years. So don't do that, right? I think that the key here is let it bubble up to the unhandled exception handler so that it can be logged, it can be then reported, can then be fixed in the next release, right?
Right.
So it's too often that things go missing because, oh, it's not the value I'm expecting, return null, because that's my default thing, right? That's not the way to program. That sort of defensive programming is the term. Yeah.
No, I agree with that statement. Although what I'm disagreeing with was that's part of it, that you should then let the program crash. You know, you need to catch it, you need to log it, you need to do all your Crashlytics stuff. But if you can keep the program from actually showing a crash to the user,
That was my argument too, and I got beaten up by Simon for it.
Nope.
No. That's not. That's what I'm saying. That exceptions can be handled, right? Again, this is about terminology, right?
Mhm.
But anything that you're not expecting to occur should be fall through to unacceptable.
Should be logged, yes, but I'm talking about errors, not exceptions.
Right? I get it.
There's errors. Yeah, but errors are something you should not be capturing. They are to be. No. Let me be clear. Again, this is about naming, right?
Huh?
These are like state error. This is invalid arguments error, invalid formatting, could not pass your stuff because you did not program in the first place to handle those situations for it to get into that bad error state, right?
Right. But having your program just disappear because it crashed, I think is a bad.
I think the term crash has been overly used here. We don't mean crashes in, oh my God, your app just died and disappeared, right?
Okay.
Like,
Well, that's how I think it based on what was said.
Yeah, I know. Crash. A lot of term people just mean crash, like a bug occurred and something didn't go right. Like,
and then just because I know you guys are gonna continue fighting, I said let me just add the last point.
Oh, go for it.
Wait, do not put like try catches in your widgets. Like, and also try just to make sure that whenever you do your try catches and you catch the error, you try to bubble it up so that you can notify the user if indeed you want to notify them, based, through an event or something like that. You want to bubble it up, but not try to put like a try catch like in your widget in the UI logic, pretty much.
All right. Here's an interesting one right here that is an offshoot of this.
Before we get
what are the advantage of functional error handling over try catch, if any?
It's composable. That's the big thing.
Which you said it's
either the functional program handling is more composable.
Yeah,
because you can build monads that have structural steps based on whether there has been an exception so far or not, and be able to you can then recompose that into smaller chunks and be able to reuse that.
So again, it's that. So the problem here is, I think I don't have a problem with people using either optionals, functional error handling like that, and having those. It makes sense in a lot of situations. However, it doesn't make sense when you're also expecting to be thrown some other type of errors.
Yeah. Oh, no. Completely.
That's the problem I have when people mix the two. Yeah. Oh, did we lose Randall?
We lost him.
We lost him.
Actually, Randall, your video has been doing this, but your audio has been okay. Your video goes screenshot on us.
Weird.
We can still hear you.
Problem locally. Weird.
Anyway. So again, this problem is that people end up like, there's a point at which you want to return something, a point at which you want to try catch, and that depends on what you're building and how you're building it. So there's not really a good example I can give. I'd normally at some level, at the lower level stuff, like let's say you're dealing with the network level, you probably want to handle it. Then you normally have a mid sort of layer that's actually turning it into something useful for the app to digest. And then you might have maybe a caching level or something else on top. And then you have your final UI layer, right? So your UI layer will probably end up dealing with the either bit, like either success or at least some maybe.
That would be the only layer where you would have
class. Yeah. Something like that. But probably at the lowest level, when you're dealing with a network, there's a ton of things that can go wrong. You're going to be losing try catches. You're going to be getting all that stuff up front. I want to point something out here in some in just a piece of code that I've seen quite often, and people get this wrong. And I'm gonna share it quickly. Just a quick example, because I think this comes up quite a lot. So see if I can get this up on the stream. What is wrong with this picture, everyone? Tell me what is the bug. Oops.
You're returning a future that might not have completed as an error or not yet.
The return
Yeah,
minus one does nothing.
Sorry?
The return minus one does nothing.
Sorry. Ignore the. Well, okay. Ignore that.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I was going to say it's going to return.
Ignore that. Sorry, but the point here is you're never going to catch.
I was going to say the catch will never be hit.
Yeah, and too often this kind of thing it takes place, right? Like this could also be in here, right? Like whatever. But the point here is you might want to have some sort of error situation, but you got to remember there is actually a you're meant to await whatever you want inside your try catch.
Okay, you're right.
Right? I know it sounds silly, but a lot of people forget to await, and they go, "Why is my exception not being handled and being converted into my custom exceptional type?" It's because you don't await in your try catch, and it's too obvious. It is quite easily done.
Now, one thing I'd like to throw out that a lot of people miss there is if you pull up that same example right there.
Sure.
If you have a finally.
Thank you. I was going to say finally. Yep. Took for cleanup. Mm-hmm.
If you have that, that's always going to happen, regardless of
exactly.
Even though you've returned in the try.
And then a lot of people don't know you can add an on in there as well.
Yeah. So
if you put it above the catch, I think, right?
Say like on exception or exactly.
Yeah. On a particular.
Yeah.
This guarantees
so if it's not that particular exception, it's just going to keep going. And you can handle each of different exceptions differently by using ons for each one you want to catch.
Now, if I want to handle the two different exceptions the same way, I have to have two ons, right? There's no way to order those together, right?
So I'm not sure if I've seen anything with pattern matching with this yet. It'd be nice if you could do something like this, right? Where you can say one or the other. But as far as I know, that's not part of the standard at the moment.
Yeah, same.
But so this works the same as most, and this is a key point. That print always doesn't matter that you returned up here because it's part of the try catch. This always gets run. That's the whole point of finally, right? So you do clean up. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we're way off base here. Let's carry on.
Sorry about that. I know it's something people get wrong. Is that or they missed that on the finally when they returned out of one of the other parts?
Everybody can go get coffee except for Roman.
I need to get lunch, not coffee. Yeah.
Does he plan on making a smart mirror with Flutter integration? I know he loves his IoT.
Actually, Arvin, thank you for the question. I actually bought a smart mirror, which actually projects it's kind of like for my bathroom. So imagine just like a nice, cool mirror, and then it projects like the screen from behind. So and then it's actually touchable, like it has like a touch surface. So so stay tuned. There's something coming with a bathroom smart mirror where while you're brushing your teeth, you can like do like some like funny stuff in the mirror. But I'm actually playing with something like that. So stay tuned. Yeah.
I've got to get around to playing around with them. That was a mango pie, and no, I'm sorry, that was 2 mango pies, I think, and a raspberry pie.
We should, Roman. We should if we can work that out. We should see if we can do a crowdfund of like a kit that people can put together.
Agreed.
That'd be really
I think that's something that the community would appreciate. Yeah.
Roman made a name badge.
Yeah.
That is a touch screen.
It's amazing.
And actually shows a Flutter app on the name badge.
And I think I've mentioned it here. Someone in Brazil took that idea and I think made a business out of it. And they actually took it much farther. Kudos to him for actually even like 3D printed it. And he actually created, I don't know if it's a business now, but the smart badge was a pretty good hit.
So we were trying to do them for last year's FlutterCon. But time permitting didn't allow for it, and I've not had time to pick it up for this year's. But hopefully, maybe at some point we'll start seeing some conference badges that are running Flutter, which would be pretty cool.
And I do have to say that was the moment that I fell deeply in love with Roman. So
thank you. Glad to serve as inspiration. Awesome.
Yep. Now I need to take one question out of order because we'll lose the context if we don't. Okay. Regarding ons, isn't an on like a switch case if you have a series of ons?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's similar.
Yeah, and to be clear, they are prioritized. So if you have a type, if you have a base type and you didn't have that before, you're going to get that handle first. So
yeah, if you put like exception up top, it's actually going to be
yeah,
like
you're not going to have a fun day.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry for those in line, but we also do try to keep things within context.
And now that you can't fall through on a case statement anyway, it's very much like that. You know, conceptually,
Alrighty.
I will say
So
conceptually.
I'm interested. I want to say there's a thing. Case statements don't fall through if there's something between them. If they're case, they will fall through.
That's true.
So there's
Yeah.
it's
Which
syntaxically it doesn't, it makes sense when you read it, but yeah, you can get caught out by that one.
But conceptually, yeah, I'd say actually more conceptually.
Yeah, as soon as you have some code inside a case statement, it doesn't fall through to the case statement afterwards.
Yeah.
Cool. Alrighty, moving on. Last time we used automatic keep alive mixin. I'm not sure when last time was, but when I tried to use it for listing over 150 images, it's still loading while scrolling. So how can we do it efficiently without loading?
There is actually a flag that you get on the scroll controller now. It tells you when you should be loading or not, and it's actually been used by the standard image loader now. It's built into Flutter. So we can take a look at that. Let me take a quick gander. There is a part of the API now actually tells you when it's a good time to start scrolling. Start loading content, and that's built in. It's going to take me a second because I've forgotten what it's called. See if I can find it. Do you know what? Any of you guys know what I'm talking about?
We never know what you're talking about.
Oh, thanks.
I've only heard of and maybe Randall can testify about this, the keep alive flag in Riverpod, where you could actually make it so that I think that's one of the additional options that you have.
There is something in the custom scroll controller, or custom scroll widget that talks about keep alive, adding an automatic keep alive around items. I forget what exactly enables that without looking it up, but I'm sure by the time I would have done that, Simon would have already found it. So I will just not bother.
Yeah. About that. Where the hell is it? Delta to scroll device ratio. The one time I want it, I can't find it.
It's not in scroll controller. It's in the scroll. Scroll custom scroll widget.
This
Yeah,
and his
I know. Yeah.
Simon
Scroll
can
view,
never
custom
find
scroll
it.
view. Yeah. There's a keep alive thing in custom scroll view, I think it is.
No, it's not that. It's not called keep alive. It's a entirely separate thing they added. For the life of me, I can't remember what it's called. Maybe we can go hunting at the end. So remind me and let's get some more questions. Then we can come back to maybe do some live coding and see if we can do this right. But basically, there's two things to be clear. Dart actually has a way of turning off the garbage collector for a period of time, so that it will actually tell you, is this a good time to do this? Is the scroll idea, and then that's automatically linked up now to the scrolling. So the idea is that as you scroll, it doesn't do unnecessary garbage collection. The kind of two things are linked up, and you can actually hook into that same system to do your own stuff. For the life of me, I can't find it right now. I know it's there. Anyway.
Okay, since we're going to move for a little bit here, Jitendra, we've asked for clarification on what app is supposedly being moved because we don't know of any.
And
until you provide that clarification.
I was going to say, I would still comment on it, the fact that they can move any app they want to. They're involved in Kotlin multi-platform. That would not say anything about the lack of support for Flutter.
But yeah, I mean, there are two questions here that just it's basically what I can tell are called false premise questions. One is about firings that didn't actually happen, and moving an app that I'm not aware is being moved because I don't know any of them. So Jitendra, please clarify, what app are you talking about?
And
So
on top,
next,
on top of that, the iOS is in beta. Android is the only one stable. iOS, I think, it's a little bit better. Web is still experimental. So if they're trying to move like a massive Flutter application to Kotlin, I think it's not going to be like super robust because they're still
you're talking about that's the status of things in KMP.
in KMP,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
Flutter is already stable on all these.
Of course,
Right.
That's the reason. Yeah.
And so if they are moving any apps, it's not going to be a major app that they're relying on being completely
Yeah.
bug free right now.
It's certainly not going to be the ones that bring in money that are already running on Flutter, like GPay, like AdSense.
But
You
like I
know,
said, even if they're experimenting with it, it's
Yeah.
I would expect that. I mean, they're involved in
Yep.
in Kotlin multi-platform.
Okay, best roadmap to study Flutter. I like that one.
Oh yeah, I was gonna suggest that one.
I'm not always agreed with. There are a couple of other good roadmaps.
But isn't that the one that this guy put together? Like that was a good one. The other
The
one,
Alexi?
the Alexei. Yeah,
Yeah, that's Anna's husband. Alexander.
yeah, Alexander. Yeah, he's good. And I
The
think that's the one that I
only
always.
married couple of Flutter GDEs I've ever heard of. Both husband and
no.
wife for Flutter
Amazing.
GDEs.
No.
That's amazing.
No, it's the
Who?
second ones. It
Who
was Lara and Miguel, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Although Laura's not a GD anymore, is she?
I was going to say I haven't seen
Was.
Laura doing anything in
Or
years.
was. Yeah, exactly. But yeah,
But was the
good
first.
point. They both were. Yeah.
Um,
Well, you
Yeah,
just
for those that
mentioned
don't
my
know,
favorite people, though.
there's also this as well, which is quite nice, which is roadmap.sh/flutter, and this goes through a nice journey that you can follow for learning about Flutter. But
Okay.
yeah, so you should be able to follow this and actually get down to deploy and get your thing on the Play Store. So there's like a nice journey you can follow.
Okay. And
That's
I
the
would
check.
like to save Jitendra a little bit of time real quick. Could the number of people here who are on the Flutter team please raise your hands?
I know, right? Yeah. None of us are.
Jitendra, there's no one on this stream who's on the Flutter team. We do not work for Google. We
No.
don't know what requests the team has had. We don't know what to tell you about how to get hired.
I can say something though. I did interview
go ahead.
there. I interviewed,
Yeah, actually, I did too.
and so
I've
So what-
tried to get an interview. It hasn't worked yet.
what I can tell you from that is that it's at the level of trying to get on the team. The interviewing is the same as all the Google interviewings for those kinds of teams.
Yep.
The people that are the people that are actually the managers of that team, they might have veto power, but they're not. They do not pick the people that are in there. So
Right.
There's a fair amount written on how to interview at Google, and that applies to the Flutter team as much as everybody else. So look for job postings. Is flutter.dev/job still there?
Yes. One other thing I do want to point out, though, Google does not hire for a team. Google HR does all the hiring, and they determine whether or not Google wants to hire you at all. Okay. You have applied for a team,
Yeah.
but it's a little known secret that people might deny. But a little birdie has told me that a lot of times the highly desirable teams like Flutter, when they post a job, the truth is it's already been settled who's going to get it. Okay. Somebody else is already going to get it. Somebody who's already an employee at Google is in line for that job. But what they're doing is they're seeing, do they want to hire you at all?
Yeah.
Because that person is moving from a team to
Yeah.
the Flutter team. And maybe somebody else was in line to get on that team, and somebody else was in line to get on the other team that person left. And now they're looking for someone for that team. And this serves a couple of purposes. One, it allows people who are already Googlers who want to be on a team to have first chance. And number two, it tells them if you're a team player. Okay. If you're going to throw a fit and cry and say, no, I want to be on that team or nothing, then you're not the kind of person they want.
Yeah. I made it through the hiring committee, and they did choose an internal person for the job I wanted.
So
So yeah. So And right now I just went and looked at flutter.dev/jobs. Jatinder, there's actually no openings right now. It says they are currently not hiring. But
If you go to Dart, though, I'm wondering if there's a separate listing for Dart, because I know that every single person who chose to not move there is a job open for those.
I'm telling you right now that flutter.dev.
Right, but that's Dart.
Flutter and Dart team job openings. The Flutter and Dart teams aren't currently hiring. Thanks for your interest.
That should be updated soon.
Anyway,
well, maybe once they understand what's going on. But
back to this question, I found the bit I was looking for, and it's basically recommend deferred loading for context. Provides a heuristic to determine if expensive frame-bound tasks should be deferred for the context at a specific point in time. This method does not create dependence on any other widget, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, the point here is this kind of all falls through from like the scroll physics. So it knows how fast it's scrolling, knows if it should defer loading right now of expensive things. So it's all explained in these. I'll pop a little link in the chat and you can go follow it yourself if you're interested. However, it links to this, what's called a scroll aware image provider. And you can see here an image provider that links onto this recommend deferred loading for context, if I can get there eventually. So yeah, you can wrap any image provider that you have in this, and it will stop it loading whilst you're scrolling. And then when it stops scrolling, it'll start loading. And you don't have to do any special code. You have to do automatic keep alive. It's just all done for you. And it will stop things from loading unnecessarily when you scroll. Okay. There you go.
Very cool.
All
righty. So we already showed the roadmap. We already did that. Memory of Simon. Depends. Coding, good. Keys, bad. Memory
more keys.
Of Simon,
we need more
when
keys.
Live coding, seeing UTF-8 in his code, maybe when receiving stream data or reading a file. What is it and when is it useful? UTF-8.
Oh dear, how to explain this? So when I was a little boy and I was doing this thing called ASCII. No,
I started with ASCII. Yeah,
I know.
Before actually UTF-8.
Yeah.
So
basically, for I will brief this very quickly, a brief history, and I'll try not to go down the rabbit hole. Computers did not talk the same languages, and they haven't done for a very, very long time. It wasn't until very recently that they actually talk very similar languages, and this is so a lot of computers actually didn't settle on a byte was 8 bits, like a word, an operating word. A lot of them were 12-bit, 10-bit, 9-bit, 16. Like there's all sorts, right? So they would operate on data at that boundary. 8 bits and octet became a standard of quite considerable breadth, and the internet came along and protocols were invented.
I've got a quick point on that.
Go on.
It's octal can be represented by 3 bits.
No, octet is a byte. There's another name for a byte. Anyway.
Right. But that's what I'm saying is 3 binary characters.
Yeah, is an octal value.
Is 8.
It's everything. Right. Anyway, so what happened then is that now we have to represent 8 bits a piece of data, and ASCII became the American standard for code information interchange, something like that. And we started getting the first 7 bits, or the lower 128 were the standard. The upper 28 were extensions. You could do whatever the hell you wanted with. And the computers became standard of EBDCC, which is extended binary data coding or something like that. EBCDIC, that's the one. Yeah. And basically, this meant that you could have extended characters. So if you're in Greek, you have the Greek characters. If you're in Japan, you have Japanese, Korean, and so on. But there's not enough to represent everything. So you would have to switch out your what's called a code page, right? So that you could work with stuff. And it was a nightmare. It was absolute nightmare. Software did it differently. There was no standard. And then the wonderful world of Unicode came along, where we can have one number that represents one character, one glyph, one thing for the entirety of human civilization. You've got Unicode characters for dead languages because they have to be represented in history texts, right? Like Unicode came around and it's always been worked on. It's always been extended. So that's Unicode. UTF is a way of representing Unicode in a format, right? There's UTF-8, there's UTF-16, and there's UTF-32. And this is basically, I don't think it's a 24. Basically means there's 8 bits, UTF-8, with 8 bits per block of UTF data. There's the UTF-16, which is the same, and UTF-32. And the uppermost bit of that 8, 16, or 32 represents the extension into another block. Mm-hmm. So you might have multiple bytes representing one character. This is the formatting. This is how it works. So anyway, take a step back. UTF-8 pretty much became the de facto standard for transferring of data because it one-to-one matches with bytes, which is what has been used for ASCII and previously. However, the extra top bit can be used to extend it into Unicode, into Unicode data set. So coming back, most data now that you receive from a server or transmit will be in UTF-8. In the very beginning of the web, this is only more recently, to be honest. This is like the last 10, 15 years. For a lot of the web, Windows servers would output in Windows 1292, I think it is. And you get these weird characters on a web page, like little AE letters and like other weird characters where the input data was from a Linux system and on a Windows system, it displayed differently. And then all this kind of stuff came along. Then people realized they needed to have a way of communicating without all this hassle. UTF-8 became the popular choice. And here we are today, basically. Yeah. So if you're going to read a file, the chances are either it's ASCII or it's UTF-8. But what's really handy is at the bottom 128 characters of UTF-8 is ASCII. So you kind of get this nice kind of mapping that means that you can specify UTF-8 and it'll just pretty much work for anything any data that didn't fall into the realm of the extended character sets of like the late 80s, 90s. Like there was a period where it was a bit mishmash, but modern times you're pretty much good. So if you're going to read a file, UTF-8. If you're gonna read a data stream from a server, UTF-8. And what's really handy is the packages in Flutter and Dart Flutter HTTP. They will automatically detect the content type header with the charset UTF-8 and will automatically process the bytes coming into UTF-8 and give you a string. A string in Dart is pre-encoded. It's been gone through its encoding. It's now in an internal memory representation, and that does not involve
which is UTF-16 actually. Yes.
Which is UTF-16, yeah. But this is quite common for software to do it because it's the middle ground. However, you do get a problem with graphing clusters, which is a whole separate thing.
And I don't remember exactly where it is, but I do know that I remember reading about how that's how come if you want to look at the actual characters in a string or count the characters in a string, it's not necessarily as simple as you would think it is.
It's the characters package in the pub, which I think
I was literally about to open that up.
Just about to pull up.
So this is what people are missing. If you do need to do some stuff with Unicode and text, what you actually want to do to get around graphing clusters, there you go, and some other interesting things you're going to get if you're reading code. So string.code units are UTF-16. Should we say UTF-16 units? They not necessarily represent one character. So if you have like a Unicode emoji, that might be 2 or 3 of those UTF-16 characters, right? So that's where characters comes into play. If you're counting characters and you want to treat one unique, let's say one emoji as a character, as a one unit, then you need to use the characters package to do that. And
otherwise, if you do dot length or anything,
you code units, UTF-8-16, code points, runes. So they have string.runes, which gives you the Unicode units of meaning, and then human perceived character dot characters. So you get the what we got here. Fun fact: the German government defines which characters of UTF-8 government application must be able to display, and then they don't support that in the official font and application you should use.
German.
Of course.
Those whack.
Are you sure this wasn't designed by the American
I
government?
was going to say, have they been taking lessons from our government?
Really?
Yeah.
Now I have had to wait for Simon because he was talking. Frey, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly again. Kind of beat me to it because of that, because I was going to say back in the 80s, I felt a little bit better because when, there was Internet Explorer and Netscape and all those, it was nice that I wasn't the only one who didn't have standards. Because there were no standards.
I remember writing software and it was just free for all. Like even now, I mean, like it's quite interesting, right? Like you can go write software and you can just do whatever you want. It's just data. Just make your own standard, right? Mm-hmm. However, you're going to get rolling eyes and you're never going to get anyone to use your software and integrate with their system because it doesn't follow a standard. Mm-hmm. If you want someone to integrate you with your system, you don't give them some extra work they need to do to interpret your data. No, you want to use a standard. A la Unicode, a la HTTP, RFCs, the world of its standards, right?
MICKEYMOUSC.
Right. Every now and then, when I see Matt Carroll getting into flame wars, that's a common one. Is when people argue that there's no need to name things properly or no need to do things, define how we're going to do things, and that's always his argument, is the fact that we're going to be taken seriously. We need standards. If we want people to use us and be able to to come in with stuff, we need standards. So.
Yep.
It's the double-edged sword of software. It really is. It's like you need the flexibility. You need to be able to do whatever you need to do and do it quickly a lot of the time. However, you do need to make sure it's properly documented, standardized, measured, everything, because if you want it to last the test of time. Otherwise, when one person's, because the person that wrote that code is the only person that really understands that code and what was going through their mind at the time of writing it. So,
and that is not the right way to get job security.
Yeah.
All righty. This one, Darren, we went over this. If I was a lawyer, I'd say asked and answered. But what's your advice for all the people afraid to use Flutter because of the firing in Kotlin multi-platform? For one, there was no firing. Okay, we've been beating on this. We went over this at length at the beginning of the stream. They moved a team from one city to another and offered the people on the team the chance to relocate and go with the team. Some people chose not to. That's why people are being replaced on the team. They could have kept their jobs if they were willing to sell their house and move to a different city. Okay, and some did not want to do that. Kotlin multi-platform is not ready for prime time completely. It's not ready for web. It's not ready for iOS, and there's nothing being moved to it that we're aware of. And it's just another option.
At the end of the day, it's just another option. If you want to use it, use it. If you don't. Pick whatever you feel is best for your problem.
It's just another tool at the end of the day. And just to back up the again Scott's point, for example, if you do like Flutter, right? Or I'm sorry, if you do like Kotlin multi-platform, it's still not ready. It's just another tool. That's why you need to still understand like the basics of like when people say like, oh, a bunch of people online were saying that Flutter was dead. It's just because the community still needs to do that the heavy lifting of still debunking all of these things. I understand that maybe if you watch the keynote, there was not much Flutter in there. Maybe that's why I got you a little worried. But it doesn't matter. It's just another tool to deliver user experiences. It's not like something that you should say, I will only learn Flutter and then I'm dead if they kill it. You have to understand, for example, like it's just another tool, another framework, but you don't you marry one framework.
Google is so dependent on Flutter internally. People afraid. If people are afraid, I would tell them to look around and wake up instead of reading memes on Twitter.
Exactly. Yeah. Plain. Yeah. Plain.
Okay, but I we're almost laughing off part of this question, but I do want to say though that there is a difference between what do we say to all the people that don't want to learn Flutter or the people that don't want to use it versus the people making the decisions at companies, and we've got a vested interest in convincing those people they should be using Flutter. So I don't want to just kind of laugh off the question and say that, if you don't want to learn Flutter, don't learn Flutter, because we ultimately need to be convincing the people that are, making these decisions, that are reading these news articles, which goes back to the messaging that, Randall and Roman were talking about. We do need to find out things to do to convince people that not only is it safe to use Flutter, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
And I do want to so George was just saying in the chat that, this is George, the other.
Okay, so we were talking earlier, though, about it was not all set up for iOS and web.
Yeah, and multi-platform.
Thank you. Yeah, I should have said Compose multi-platform is beta, not KMP. Sorry, not KMP. Sorry.
But it's, if you're trying to use the two things together, then it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, you're still in beta.
But yeah, as Daniel was correct. Yeah. I think the thing is, like, at the end of the day is, I'd say try it, right? If you've got a team of Android developers that are all used to Kotlin and Kotlin multi-platform and Compose, and you want to put a bet on that, then that's your choice. Do it.
Yeah.
On the other hand,
if you like, for example, maintaining multiple code bases, like multiple UI front ends, hey, much power to you. I rather do one single code base, so that's it.
I mean, even I'll be honest with you, even if I had the both, like it's never going to be, as John just said here, it's time to ignore this Flutter is dead thing. Like, do you know what's funny is me and Scott were fending off questions about this in 2018 at DroidCon, and ever since. And it's always the same thing, and it's the same, and it's gone from strength to strength. I'm not going to say
tiring.
Yeah.
But I was saying, anyway, no matter how many times you answer it, Chicken Little is always hiding in a closet, and a lot of times it's the same people who don't want to let it go.
Right. Come on.
Well, Stacy, the Android.
Yep.
I can't remember what her handle is. Whatever.
Stacy Divino, the Android at GDE. We've had this conversation in restaurants. She and I sit down and eat together quite often.
Yeah, she's not unfriendly to Flutter per se, but but when I was checking to the hotel, she asked me about the layoffs. The big story.
Well, she didn't know whether or not it got the Flutter team got hit, but Stacy and I had a long conversation.
She knew that they had, because of the bad messaging that had happened. And I had to tell her that they really weren't.
Yeah. We had a conversation last year.
That's the one that's actually friendly to Flutter.
Let's just move on. Let's just move on.
Well, it's real quick, though.
One of the things that
Stacy was saying is very important to this conversation. And that is that one of the biggest former Android GDEs and one of the biggest Android speakers, a keynote speaker at DroidCons, for more than 5 years. Okay. She is very insistent that the vast majority of apps are cookie cutter apps. They are YouTube knockoffs, Twitter knockoffs. They are Tinder knockoffs, all kinds of things like that, or variations on. And so the vast majority of apps don't need anything special. They don't need to be super high performance, and it's dumb to not write them in Flutter. Now, if you are trying to do a game or heavy 3D, then you're looking at native.
Right. But that is the wrong messaging. You're saying, if it's like a cookie cutter app, use Flutter. If it's a dumbed down.
Oh, no, I was saying the other way around. No, yeah.
I'm saying that's great to use those, but then it's great to use on all of those things. And the only thing that I'd say that it doesn't perform yet on other things that Flutter is improving on, which is like multi-window support, like 3D, like all these things that they're currently working on that will eventually get there. But
and min-maxing performance, like for a driving game that's moving very fast.
You can get that performance out of a Flutter, like the Flutter performs the same as native. I'm sorry.
And how about when people say because Compose actually builds native and Flutter doesn't? That's another one that I just laugh off.
Flutter builds machine code. Native doesn't.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Right. If you can get 120 frames a second, it doesn't matter what you're writing in, as long as it's working to do that.
What was that one that Passy and them hit in 2017? Was it like 200 frames a second?
120.
No, they hit 120 for sure. Yeah, and I was wondering what device did they test it on, and finally I got a chance to ask him, and Passy said they had to run it in an emulator because they didn't have a screen that could keep up.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, right? But like, you've got devices now that are running like 90, 120, 144 mobile devices, and they all support Flutter, and Flutter will run at those frame rates. I think it will probably. I think they're still trying to work on like the 144. I think it was up to 120. I can't remember what I saw, but this was a while ago now. They might have resolved the issues they had.
Oh yeah, this is 2018, 2017.
But anyway, let's move on. More questions, and then for anyone
More
else,
questions.
you off,
Okay,
Daniel?
here's a loaded. Oh, anybody else?
Right.
I was just gonna say I'm at the point I've got to get back. I've got my my sprint planning about to
Yeah,
start.
I'm
Thanks for joining
getting
us.
pretty close.
Thanks everybody. Good seeing you, Roman.
All right.
Good seeing everybody in the
Take
chat.
it easy, Danielle. Was
Go
good to
now.
see you again.
I'll
To
see you all
see you
next
in
time.
person.
It's been
Yeah.
forever. I mean, it's almost like what, 2 weeks?
I know, right? Exactly.
Right.
Perfect.
See you
Except
soon.
Simon though. Simon's been a lot longer.
Well, you're coming to FlutterCon, are you, this year? Daniel?
You know I am.
There you go then.
There you go.
Right.
I wish I could. They accepted my talk, but it's in the middle of our new family vacation. And basically, I like sleeping inside the house.
Right. All right. Thanks for joining us, Danielle.
Bye.
We'll see you soon.
All right.
So
Here's a
just last
loaded
call out.
question.
We've
Yeah.
got a few questions left, but I've got a couple room for maybe for a couple more. So get your questions in now. Otherwise, they're not going to get
Right.
answered.
Yeah,
That's the last
I've got
call.
about 2 left in me. So,
Cut off immediately. Cut off.
I'm
really
almost
soon.
cutting it. Yeah.
yep. This is kind of loaded. Is it possible to load precompiled Dart code in Flutter? Up until recently, no.
You
Recently,
mean like short?
RFW.
Yeah.
Oh,
or-
RFW can accept precompiled or a modified JSON string.
No,
yeah, you can
that's
do
not
like
the same
server
thing.
side Flutter, like you can inject like the whole. Yeah.
Now, well,
Right.
but here's an interesting thing though. You're talking to precompiled Dart code. RFW is UI. RFW is not heavy logic.
So it's bytecode. It's not.
Oh, okay. So no.
The wording here is loading precompiled Dart code, as in the Dart code itself is compiled to machine code, right? Like, can we
I
load?
was under the impression that RFW is doing machine code.
No.
I thought RFW was doing that. What we just mentioned, like
It just does so the idea is that it takes that string representation, interprets it into a
the widget
bytecode,
string.
so that there's no need to do that interpretation a second time because it can be directly interpreted by the bytecode, right? And that's sent across the wire. So the compiled stuff is just that it's smaller to send and doesn't require interpretation.
But
This
and
is-
to
it's an
your
intermediate
point,
type.
if you want to change the UI remotely, you can.
You've always been
Now,
able to do
it
that.
is designed mainly to be done via a server. I have been working with Ian Hickson a little bit and a few others. I'm working with Ian on it because RFW is Ian's package. And every time I get stuck, it's like he's one of the few people on the planet who can answer the question. So I've been nagging. I haven't been working with him so much as I've been nagging him. Hey, what about this? Hey, what about that? Hey. So
I'm sure he loves you.
but yes, look into remote Flutter widgets and you can see that
But that's not what
right here.
That's not what the question is asking, though.
Yeah.
How in the world but this is the closest thing.
No, it's not.
No. No.
Yeah,
I
because you're
agree.
still, it's just like a string representation of the widget tree that then just gets like compiled on the spot and then just rendered as widgets. But the
And-
precompiled Dart code, I kind of assume a little bit more associated, a little more like the closest to like lazy loaded modules. It was already, precompiled and then you just like load it on demand. But other than that,
So Sasqua, I assume that's how you
This
pronounce
question
the name.
is vague. This question is vague. Re-ask.
Well,
the-
I think compiled Dart code is not vague. Compiled Dart code is quite standard. That's not vague.
It's specific enough to try to answer, I think.
Anyway, so I will say that you've always been able to use FFI for some time now. I think for quite some time FFI has been around, and you can run any precompiled code, right? So you can take code and you can
Right.
compile it and then use it. The problem you've got is that Dart code cannot load other precompiled Dart code. This is because they both run their own version of the engine. It's not that you can't run two engines in the same process space, you can, It's more about the fact that it doesn't export. So when it builds a binary, that binary does not have what's called dynamic export, so they can't be loaded by another piece of software. So until that's added to the output end of the Dart compiler, you won't be able to
Now,
like,
what about
load
deferred
modules
imports?
or load plugins in your Dart code made with other Dart code.
How does deferred imports fit into this?
Deferred imports doesn't work with AOT.
Yeah.
I don't think.
It's only web, right?
So it's only web.
I don't think it even works on web anymore. Deferred imports was
Yeah.
I
Pretty
can't
sure still
remember.
does.
Yeah, I haven't worked
there
with
was-
web in a couple of years, so
I'm trying to remember even like, so if I remember rightly, you got deferred components,
Mhm.
which is only supported by Android. I believe.
Oh, wow. Even stranger.
that's interesting.
So you got deferred import, sure. Here you go. Flutter is capable of building apps that can download additional Dart code and assets at runtime. This allows you to reduce installed APK size and download features and assets as needed by the user. We refer to each uniquely downloadable bundle of Dart files and assets as a deferred component. To load these components, use Dart's deferred imports. They can be compiled into split AOT and JavaScript shared libraries. Right? But
So
Yeah,
there
Flutter
we are.
supports
So
So
the lazy loading.
deferred imports is not gone.
only on Android and web.
Oh,
The
web.
implementation is Android
And
dynamic
there's the
features module
keyword,
delivery.
that you add like to a script if you want to do like lazy loading on it, like for the deferred aspect.
Yeah. So but yeah, platform. So I think that to see this really be a deep dive of technical, there you go, deferred components on the wiki, about how it works and all the rest of it.
I've actually also done like in an existing Android application, bring in like a Flutter module already pre-compiled, already pre-packaged, and then you can just inject it inside of an Android view, like some sort of a
You can do it the other way, no problem. But yeah, so if you're looking at it, I put the link. I think I put the link to deferred components in the chat. Did I? No, I didn't.
Not yet.
There you go. It's in the chat now. So yeah, if you're looking for it, it's deferred components.
Okay. All right. Moving on. What is the most stable, feature-rich AR package for Flutter? I would be interested if anybody knows this.
I think only the AR Core Flutter plugin. I think there's one like kind of wraps around the AR Core capabilities of Android. But as far as that, I don't know any other like augmented reality package for Flutter.
For iOS, there's an AR Core one.
And as far as I know, really, Flutter has only really been used for AR VR for menus, unless there's something new that I'm not aware of.
I know there's a lot of cool things being developed around 3D rendering in Flutter and whatnot. Yeah, I think that was that's for ARKit. That's for the
So yeah, this is Lushenko.
Wait a
it
minute,
supports mobile devices A9 later.
Is that Alexander?
I don't know. Lushenko. I don't know.
That's going to be Anna or Alexander.
or maybe both.
Or maybe both, yeah. So Alexander is the same person who put together that roadmap.
So anyway, so yeah, there's ARKit and then there's an AR Core one for Flutter.
What was the AR Flutter plugin?
This one. Sorry?
It was listed on the previous.
Oh, look, there you go. Thanks to Alexander Lushenko for inspiring the precious ARKit Flutter plugin, which is the other one we just looked at. So there you go. So this one, by the way, is by DeFranco.
Is that Gianfranco?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
He's Gianfranco down at Somnio Software in Uruguay.
Yeah.
Fun guy. Saw him last week.
Yeah, but yeah, there you go. I don't think that we're still looking at, so you can do 3D in Flutter, but it's CPU projection 3D without a depth buffer, which is what I've been doing up until now on the 3D game stuff that I've been playing around. So go look on, just search my name in 3D on YouTube and you'll find a bunch of my videos, right?
Yeah.
However, yeah, if you're talking about augmented reality and taking advantage of like this, it's gone, the system.
Oh, sorry about that. I got rid of the question.
Sorry. Then yeah, I would go with whatever the platform supports and just find the most rated plugin and use that. Yeah. So I think that there's two separate plugins, mainly around the fact that they're different interfaces, right? So it's you get at least common denominator problem when you're trying to implement those type of packages where the platforms offer different features, and then if you want both, then it's hard to offer a compelling case where you've got a standard interface that's shared.
Okay, we need to cut questions. There are 5 questions in the queue, which means Simon's we're going to have 4 minutes per question. That's not possible.
Never going to happen
with this crew.
No, stop talking, start answering. There you go.
All right, but I need to split. I said I had 2. That was 2.
All right.
So hopefully this thing has worked out.
All right.
But
yes,
you all have a good one, and I will catch you later.
Bye.
I guess I'm the question master at this point then. So I want to hide access, editing, visibility capability to some Flutter code sections. Is it possible to precompile and import the section as a binary encrypted format? How do you go about this? Why are you going to all this trouble?
Isn't this like related to the other one a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's the same person.
It might be the same. I want to hide access, editing, visibility capability to some Flutter code section. Is it right? You need to like expand upon this a little bit. Is it possible to precompile and import a section of binary / encrypted format? So as we said, like you could have some for example, you have some intermediate level code that you're using. Let's say Lua script or something else. You can encrypt it, and then you can have your app interpret that to perform some logic, right? There's even a JavaScript one. You can even go have a JavaScript scripting capability in your Flutter app, right? And then use that, right, to perform your logic. But Dart, no, because it's compiled as AOT. You can, if you're trying to do maybe something more specific, you could write that in C, precompile and even encrypt that precompiled code and then like load it in at runtime, because that can do exports. But at the end of the day is
yeah, but they mentioned the importing that section as a binary. When I say import the section, when he says importing the section, I'm assuming like injecting it into the UI, like maybe a new screen or something like that. I understand what you said about like maybe do precompile C++, put it in the bundle, and then use it during AOT. But
UI is just one piece of the puzzle, right? Like at the end of the day, is any code that you're not referencing is not going to get included into your app.
Of course,
tree shaking, right? So, but what you can do is what RFW does, which is you create widget sets, and I've even done this. I can even share the code. I did an RFW type thing many years ago. It's a simple like 400 lines, I think it was. I called it inflator. Or something.
I saw it. You
what was it called? I can't remember what I called it now. I swear it was like layout inflator. Oh yeah, it is here. Widget inflator. I found it.
I you know what? I actually tried that myself one time, and I'm like, oh, I'm going the route of Simon. Like I created this, and I was just creating like the widgets based on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was done a lot longer before this date. Actually, it was done like 2018. But this is when we redid it on the live stream. And the idea here is that you've got an XML file. You can inflate it. And then it will pass the XML file during layout. I won't go into it all. There's not that many lines here. And when it finds a particular like padding, width, height, whatever it is, it will then go and colors, whatever else it was. Yeah, widgets, text, column, row,
the widget for it. Correct.
And that will then create the widget. Now this means the row widget is going to be included because it's referenced, right, in your code base. It won't be tree shaken out.
Right.
But this also means that now you've got all of the widgets that you reference included in your app, even if you never ever reference them. But you might remotely send down the string to reference them. And here's like an example layout in XML. Right? There you go. It's a bit long-winded, but you get the idea.
Exactly. So this is a little bit related to the RFW that we were mentioning, server-side widgets that you can just import and inject.
And this is I mean, again, this not not possible. But the point here is what this doesn't include is the logical code. What happens if you press the on press, right? Because that, like, it's great to do UI, but what you're just describing is the structure of the widgets on the screen, but not the logic behind those widgets. Now, that has to be a layer of scripting in there because it has to be otherwise compiled. When it comes to not including a piece, Peter, what you can do is use dot defines to like you said, hide access or editing or visibility of capability, right? You can do what's like, you can treat them as feature flags. So you've probably seen this: ball dot from environment, string dot from environment. These are you have the dot from environment on ball, int, string. I think there. I don't know if there's one on enums, but the point here is it means that you can read these dot defines. These are compile time flags. And what will happen is because of tree shaking, it won't include a whole section of your code. So if you wanted to, you can do two versions of your app with one code base, one that's free, one that's paid, for example. And literally the pay features are not just turned off. They're not even compiled into your app. No one can actually get to them because of the dart define acts as a constant value, which means it can be tree shaken. All that whole code in your app can be tree shaken out. Right.
I think
but
that's
it doesn't mean you can remote
turn you can get to that.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you can remote turn it on. So I think when it comes back to it, to remote sort of load or import precompiled Dart code is not currently possible apart from the deferred components that we spoke about, which is Android and web only, right? And they have specific limitations around that as well. So go read up the docs, the link I'll put in the chat.
Or whatever Shorebird's doing.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, you see,
that's not a bad shout. Yeah, that's not a bad shout. It's a bit different though, but
right. But Shorebird does essentially let you ship new code that was not originally with your app and doesn't have to be in a downloadable form other than accessible Shorebird app.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they do. I'm not sure. I'm not really. I can't remember when I last looked at some of the stuff for Shorebird. I'm not sure how they're doing it.
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, is the way hot reload works is probably, I'm assuming, very similar to where they're doing it. In which I'm speaking for them. I don't know how it works. So
like tapping into the Dart virtual machine,
But no. What happens is when your Dart runtime runs, if you go look at the entry point, I can even show you in a second if people are interested. You give it where to find the bundle of assets. That is your precompiled code and data that your app uses to run. We just replace those files essentially with new ones.
Yep.
That's it. You've got new code. Congratulations. But again, that's your entire code compiled as one unit. It's not broken up into multiple units that are shipped independently, right? And that's a separate problem. So if you wanted to, yeah.
I bumped into Eric actually at Google I/O again for the first time face to face.
Well, he's doing the show, but it's great.
Yeah, and it's like I did confront him. I said though, so how viable do you think this is? Are the stores going to let you keep doing this? And he goes, well, we can't promise anything, but it's likely it's just going to keep coming in under the radar. So that'll be good.
So it's kind of interesting because they do say, and Apple specifically say that you can do updates as long as they're minor changes.
Yeah.
And they do that because of JavaScript and web-based products where you're going to be running that code. There's no way they can enforce it. So, and it's the same as like a game. A game has Lua script or JavaScript inside to run its game logic. You're going to update that on the fly, right? At what point do you say, oh, you've just replaced all the code that we haven't reviewed, right? The difference here, I think, is native functions, right? So when it's native, like you're running functions from the operating system, they can review that because they can say, oh, you're requesting a location, but you didn't have the location permission, or you didn't give the location reason why you need the location to the user for privacy, right? These are all things that should be enforced, right? But what your app does internally, its own business logic, they can care less, right? Like as long as it doesn't break any of their EULA, right? Like,
yep.
Right.
Hey, we got 10 minutes, 3 questions. So I think we kind of covered this already. My use case for this would have been the Dart company libraries and the customer app, where the customer has access
So
the source of their, not the library.
there
I think we
is
were talking
there is I honestly think that we are the Dart team's missing a step here, that they need to kind of jump into this space, because Dart has been used so widely, and you want plugins, you want this ability to break up your code into portions and access them. The way you do this is dynamic loading. It's a known problem. It wouldn't take too much to make this work. And I think if you had an output target for Dart, you do Dart build and you have like your different targets, AOT, APK, whatever else, have a target which is dynamic library, right? And it doesn't compile in the Dart runtime at all. It's just the Dart code itself that's compiled, and it can only be loaded by an existing Dart application. Fine, boom, ship it, right? Like there's no reason why that shouldn't be possible. And Dart actually does allow for it's called the Dart DL API, or Dynamic Link API, and it does actually support all of this from a environmental perspective. It's just that the Dart engine itself doesn't compile this. So yeah, maybe we get there.
All right. As Flutter devs, maybe away from home, code on the go, have you experienced used IDX or GitHub code spaces leveraging cloud power rather than local? I always have my laptop with me, so I don't really qualify for this, but and I've played with IDX. It's interesting, but it's not been enough for me to shift any kind of change to the way I'm doing development.
Same
Same.
here. Yeah, same here. I've used Project IDX, but I use it mostly, for example, like if I want to like do like a workshop, and then I want to bring people in, I don't want to have them spend time installing things on their machine, so that they can immediately start coding. But other than that, yeah, shipping, not yet.
But here's the next question for you on that point, Roman. Why should they not just stick with Project IDX? Why should they install it on their machines?
Why
just flip? No, I'm just flipping that on there. The reason you said was because they don't have to install anything until they go to install something. Well, what happens if they don't need to anymore because of things like CodeSpace and IDX? Why? When should you think? I feel like this is a discussion, because for me, I don't think I can answer this. But when is the point when you go, oh, I'm going to run it on my local machine? Should I be running on my local? Should I be going in cloud? I mean, there's an interesting point here around privacy as well. And I know you've got, like, for a fact, if something's running on your hardware, on your machine, it is private to your domain, right? Like unless something's been transmitted out your machine, that that's being handled there. And any communication you have, let's say to GitHub, it's encrypted. You're obviously got trust in GitHub and what they're storing of your source code. But then again, there's things like GitLab and private hosting that you can have your own private repository for your company, right? You're not required to use these cloud services. So there is a notion of privacy here, right? That I think is an important piece of the puzzle, right? It's great to say I'm going to run all my editing in the cloud, but then information being transacted and where it's running from is on someone else's hardware in another potentially foreign domain. We'll say that, like, if Project IDX only runs its servers in America, it's well known by laws now that makes it under the laws of the United States, right?
Yep, correct.
So there's an interesting dynamic here of what that means overall, right?
For me, I do it mostly like for performance. The Project IDS is for convenience. Everything is there. Everything is just spin up. You're all done. But then as far as like doing it locally is more like, again, the privacy aspect, also the performance, closer to the metal, and then you want to get like the better best performance out of that. But I see Project IDX, for example, like working as a team. Like you own the code, somebody just comes in and starts working, and then you own the whole pipeline, as opposed to then like, oh, they have to download the code. They have to have you could go to any place where there's a stable internet connection and a browser, and you could do Project IDX. So convenience.
It's interesting. Is this the same? Would it similarly be like you own DVDs, you own Blu-rays, you own the videos versus streaming the stuff?
Exactly.
Right? Is this what we're saying here? Like now we're going to the moment of we rent the equipment, we rent the space. You don't actually have anything.
Correct.
You don't have access remotely. Yeah, I mean, as a company, does a company or a business that that builds some software, do they want to have the entire pipeline and infrastructure on IDX? That's a hard sell.
Yeah, that's true.
And the problem here is there's no smooth, like, unless you run a service like that for a very long time, it's a hard sell, right? Because you need time for companies and for businesses to make a transition or to even try it out for a period of time and then decide that this is the way that they want to run their business, and here's the next thing and not have it be shut down on them.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah,
You see
Sorry.
where this also,
Because that is the other side of this.
And
It's
this
different
a
if you
little bit. Go ahead.
if this sorry, I'm just going to tell you
Go
you
ahead.
could do that whole pipeline remotely and have people that they never actually get the code downloaded and do all this. If it was self-hosted, then that would be a different proposition because I own it, I still got the privacy, and I've solved that problem, but haven't got the idea that I've got all my company in reliance and my business practices involved around this third-party service or product that at some point, like a streaming service, like I'll give you an example. I had this happened to me the other day. I bought something on Amazon Prime, and they're like, I went to go watch it, and they're like, we don't have the license for this anymore. You can't watch it. I'm like, I paid for it. And
Right.
and it's that same thing. Like they could just decide we're not going to run
But I like your
code
point.
spaces anymore,
I like your point.
right?
You can have like, for example, like AWS has like they ship you a hardware and you can host it on prem, and then you can have like your little private cloud. Imagine then you having your own infrastructure, you host everything like that. People just come in and then access your own little network. You can own everything.
At this point, you go, well, what is the hell is the point?
Yeah, now you're like,
right? So this is why I think like the end of the day is it's like it's great to have this, but am I getting anything substantially more of benefit from using a service like this?
Agreed.
And like you just said, yes, there's situations like Workshop where people don't have the installation setup necessary to build, and they're going to, and that makes obvious sense. There's a bonus to doing it that way. But from a perspective of just general development, is there any purpose to doing that? And I'm like, I can't see it.
I agree. No, yeah, that's why I'm still not fully sold on that. I see the benefits. I see.
I like the idea. I like the idea, and especially I like the idea when it comes as an emergency thing, like oh, I don't have my equipment, but I need to make this code change, or I need to do this thing and test it. Boom! I jump onto some online service and I do it. Right. I mean, there's all the rage for some time, which was running Android Studio or like a Chromebook, or get Flutter to compile on like on Chrome OS and things like that.
Yeah.
Which great, but at the end of the day,
I think it's like a step above like Flutterflow. Remember we were discussing Flutterflow, how they own everything, how they own the code, and you cannot, for example, like if you download it and you try to bring it back in, it doesn't work like that. Project IDEs would allow you to do so, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the output is just your normal code, right? Like
it's your own thing.
I think, so it's interesting that what that means. I'm not seeing any big shift. I'm not seeing a lot. Like it's not like AI, right? It's not like the whole AI trend right now. There's not going to be a big dynamical shift.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's not a super game changer, industry disruptor. Exactly.
And I feel like if it did need to take place, it's going to take a long time, and it means that there needs to be a long-term plan to keep that service paid and operational at the cost of that GitHub or Google or whatever for that period of time. And when I say long time, I mean like 10, 20 years time, which is a huge long ass time in development terms for it to become, and then it still may not win at the end of it. It's a long bet.
Right. Cool. All right. We got one last question real quick. Almost top of the hour. Let's do it. Any protected content with DRM support for Flutter planned? We don't know. We don't work for Flutter.
Don't know.
I'm trying to remember. I think the video, as far as I know, the video player plugin does actually support it because it uses Exo Player on Android. So, from an Android perspective, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to run DRM content. But I'm not sure how the whole capture display thing works because it uses a hardware texture, so it should work. Yeah, I mean, for the most part, Kratos,
try it. Try it and see.
Yeah, try and see. As far as I know, when it comes to DRM, and there's no reason why that wouldn't work. Because the way the actual platform works, the way it used to work and the way it now works for video, so this is video playback specifically, right? If you had a custom widget, like an Android SDK for some DRM provider, that would not work because the way it works is it puts that widget on a display, and that display then captured. The output of that is then piped back into the Flutter composition flow and renders part of the UI. And that capture is not possible with DRM. That's the bit that fails, right? However, if the output target of video playback is a hardware texture, that's done inside the GPU, which keeps inside the DRM space. And then when Flutter composes, it's composing that texture together in the GPU. It means that you never try to record the DRM surface, and it will not come back blank, right? And therefore, it should work. That's the way I understand it to work, and that's the way it should work. It may be a case that the Exo player and the video player Android package, it's called video_player_Android, may not support Exo player's DRM module, in which case you could fork it, add it, and then use the federated plugin system to actually load your own DRM version and make it work. But yeah, probably not a problem, as it were. You shouldn't have to do that. Right.
All right. Top of the hour.
I'm good.
Anyway,
are you
good show.
good? Are you good to stick around? What's the plan? We're gonna call it now. Everyone good?
I think we're gonna call it now.
I got
work pressure.
I'm gonna answer a couple. There's 2 questions I've got to answer here. Sorry. It's up to you if you want to stick around, but yeah, do not use shrink wrap true. Do not do that. And using netcom data row.
Well, you
I
answered
don't have
that.
a fixed site for every row.
Pleasure
Bye,
being
Roman.
with you guys. Thank you so much. See you next time.
Stop by.
See you later. See you next time.
Anytime. You're always welcome.
No, we'll say yeah. There is a data table source, isn't it? Like it does actually. It is not. It is recycled. I'm trying to remember which one it is. It is data table. Yeah, but you're doing it on. It's done on page loads, right? It's on groups, but it should be no reason how to lazy load. It does lazy load. That's like built in. It's paginated data table. That's what you want. Paginated data table. All right, I found it. Yeah, it's in the chat.
Different.
I have a data row 10 items, including very bad performance, even with 30-40 records. I'm going to say that's probably more down to your maybe down to your layouts, but the problem here is
server. Maybe.
The problem here, Rutvik, is probably that you're using the wrong widgets for it. Like you need to look at what you're doing. I would suggest you look at doing a custom scroll view with a sliver main access group and actually using slivers properly, because you're going to get the proper recycling and loading as required, and you can just keep scrolling and do your infinite loading, right? I don't know why data tables, why you're using that, but maybe come back next week and we can get into more detail. There you go. That's the answer to that one.
Yes, 166 hours. 166 hours.
Oh, how nice it would be to go to Peru. I can't make it in October because we have Flutter Joy-Con London here, which I help organize. So October's all fully booked for me.
And I wasn't invited yet, so that means I don't know.
Maybe this is your invite. Maybe you should.
Maybe, yes, I don't know. It's hard to tell. Well, somebody's got to pay for it, though.
You should reach out to.
It can't just be my check, unfortunately. So
reach out, and Roman said he'll be there. So there you go.
Good.
That's it. That's all, folks, and that's the end of the stream. Thank you for coming to us, and we'll see you same time, same place next week.
166 hours from now. Bye.
Bye.